Welcome to the ACR webinar on reducing mistakes with better use of the system and the security. The webinar is designed to take us through using ACR's user and menu security, including how to create user groups, assign the permissions to them, and how to manage those permissions while we're there, as well as covering some basic physical security like antivirus and your server. So there will be a Q&A session at the end of the webinar, so please feel free to type your comments in the question or the chat box at any time, and at the end of the webinar we'll have a look at what questions and such are there and we'll answer them. So as I said, what we're going to be covering today is creating user groups, assigning the user groups to users, using the menu security and the different options available in how to manage that user security, as well as physical security for the computer and your server. So what we're going to do, we're going to flick over to ACR now. So, user and menu security is often an overlooked aspect of the ACR system. So there's a lot of people who focus on using the product, but not necessarily what needs to be done about making sure that users have access to the correct systems and modules, and also whether they've got access to too much within the system. When I say too much, there are some parts of the ACR system which some users don't necessarily need to have access to, things like the financials, the banking, the payroll, if you're running those systems, that you may wish to actually have secured off so that general users can't accidentally open up and start looking in that information if they click on the wrong thing. So, within ACR, the way we actually do the security is via security groups or user groups that you can give different levels of permissions to. We're going to start the webinar by actually creating a group. Once we've created that group, we're going to assign some security to it for some set procedures. Then we're going to add that group to one of our users, and that way we can actually then see the difference in what a user would see if they've got restricted access versus what they can do if they've got certain levels of access. There are many ways to apply security within the system. As I was sort of saying, you can either have it left quite open where basically people can access pretty much or everything in the system, or you can lock it down really tightly so that they can basically only open the select things that they need to do their job. There's no correct way of doing this, whether you lock it down, whether you leave it open. It really comes down to what works for your circumstances in your business. Some businesses run on a very small, tight team that putting a lot of restrictions in may actually cause problems with certain people not being able to do jobs or not being able to fill in for other people where required. Whereas other businesses have clearly defined roles that certain people only do certain functions within the business, so it's much easier for them to restrict the business down and to lock down the system to a narrower group of users. So the first thing that we're going to have a look at today is doing the user groups. So this is just in your user group maintenance within ACR. So what you'll find is when you open user group maintenance for yourself, there are generally two default groups, the everyone group and the administrators group. So ACR highly recommend that all users are part of the everyone group. This way it's easy to do carte blanche changes that affect everybody. Administrators group is designed for your high-level internal users and is generally given to one or two people who manage the ACR system. and that is generally given full access to everything. That way, if an administrator needs to come in and do something, they can quickly get in and do what they need to without having to worry about adding or taking permissions away. Once you then start adding additional user groups, you then need to start thinking about how you're going to apply those user groups. As you can see here in the example system we have, there are quite a number of groups. It's not uncommon to only end up with maybe 2 or 3 additional groups, at least to start with, because it's much easier to manage your groups when it's only a small amount of groups rather than when you've got a large amount of groups. So there are basically 2 ways to go about setting up groups. One can be to set groups that align to job descriptions. So you may have an accountant and you may set up an accountant's group that gives them all of the different functions that the accountant person needs. Then you might set up a point of sale operator to give only the functions that they need, and set up a warehousing group to only give the people in the warehouse the access they need. Alternatively, you can set groups up that are aligned with different functions within ACR. So you might have a group set up for debtors that gives all of the debtors functions, or a group set up for creditors that gives all of the creditors functions. Now, you don't necessarily need to have only one set or only set groups up in one way or the other way. You can mix and match depending on what your requirements are. Because you may have certain people like a payroll officer and an accounts person who you set up specific groups that do all of the different functions they will require. But then you may go in and do more generic groups like debtors and creditors to be able to give that to a range of people that all of these people may at some time need to do a debtors or a creditors function, but you don't want to restrict down to just certain features within there. On the same topic, you may do something like what we have an example here with the banking, where you might have somebody who does your bank receipting. So you set up a banking receipting group to allow them to do things like your cash receipting, printing your bank deposit slips and such, to generate those to do the banking, but then have a different person who has access to all of the banking functions, because your person who does receipting may not necessarily need to do a bank reconciliation or do your cash receipting, or cash payment, sorry. So, in saying that, one thing that I do highly recommend and ACR highly recommends is, in the description, put something that makes it clear what your intention for this group is. And if you change how you're using the group, it is advised to come back and review what the description says the group is for. We've had a number of people over the years, and because some people have been using this system for 10, 15, 20 years, some of these groups may have been set up 10 or 15 years ago and have just been maintained since then. And if there's no description that indicates what they're used for, they're relying on the name being relevant. And it may have been a relevant name 10 years ago, but with restructures or with changes to how the business operates, it may no longer be relevant. So putting the description helps with being able to track down what your intended use is, or even if you get a new person and you're trying to figure out which groups to give them, you can come in here and have a look at the descriptions to hopefully give you the indication of which group they should be in. So what we're going to do now is actually create a new group. So it's quite simple. I like to clear the screen before I create something new. Click on New, and in the field here we can type in the name. And press enter to bring it up. From here we can then give it a description. So ability to look up customer products and do a sales inquiry. So something nice and simple just to explain what we're going to actually be using this group for. So we'll click on Save. What we can do now is if we click Clear and click Find, we'll actually find that this group is now slotted in here, Customer Inquiry. So that's it. That's all you need to do to create a group. As I said, when you first start off doing your security, you might set 2 or 3 different groups, or you might plan this all out and have it all nicely structured and go, right, I need 10 new groups to start with. You can go ahead and create them as many or as few as you need to achieve what you're trying to achieve with with security in your system. So once you've created your groups, given that a useful description, that's all we really need to do with the user group maintenance from here. Really nice and simple, easy to use. From here, what we can do then is actually move on to the security maintenance. Now, with security, there's actually 3 different ways you can go about adding security to a menu item within ACR. So what I'll actually show you is the different options. So what we can do here, something like System Administrator. If you select the item, click on File Security, you'll get into a user security screen that will allow you to add groups, set permissions, set whether it's active or not, and set whether a password prompt is going to be used. You can also access the security by just simply right-clicking on the item and Security. And what you'll notice here is when you right-click on it, at the top it actually tells you what menu item you're going to apply security to. So that way you've got to double check. Now, within ACR, security is applied to each menu item, not to the header block. So you can't, or in Release 2 security for ACR, it's given to each menu item. The reason for that is it gives you a greater level of control about which items you want to set security on. So something like under the debtors here, you can go in and you can actually set different security on each of these items. So it just allows you more control over what your users can and can't access within the system. And that does come in very handy when you're trying to fine-tune that a certain person needs 3 items in this and 2 items in that and 4 items over here. Rather than having to give them everything that's available in that screen, in that section, you can choose which parts are relevant to the user itself. So the third way we can do security in the Release 2 system is with security maintenance. So when we open security maintenance, the primary difference between the previous 2 methods in security maintenance, each of the other 2 methods works on a menu item by menu item basis. So you open one menu item, set what you need, save and close it, open the next item. In security maintenance, however, you're actually able to scroll through all of the different available items. And as you'll notice here, you'll see different things flicker on the side as different items come through with having security set on them or not. And you can actually then work on multiple items quickly rather than having to go back and forward clicking on each of them. So the security maintenance screen is made up primarily of 3 parts. The menu item, which can either be just selected on, scrolled through, or search. So you click Find, and it'll then just keep going through the next one that you're after. The next section is the actual security being set. Now, this section will show differently depending on what you have already set in security for that menu item. And what you'll find is that these item names on the side here, whichever one is highlighted is the one you're working on. So in this case, we're looking at the Customer Maintenance Shop Talk, and you can see that somebody has actually already gone through and set security levels for different groups on this system. So with security on this, with security here, the permissions have an order of precedence. So when we open it up, the lowest level of security is at the top of the list, the highest level is at the bottom. And what I mean by that is the way security is applied in ACR, it will have a look at all of the different groups you're a member of. Have a look at all the possible levels of permission or security that you can have assigned based off your different levels. Whichever level has the highest level of precedence security is the level that user will achieve. So if this user was a member of the everyone, the point of sale operators and the front office, they would get the add function for front office. However, if they were only a member of everyone and staff only, they would get display only level. So just to explain each of the levels, do not allow is the baseline item that says in general they are blocked out of this item. And when applying security, we usually recommend to set, unless you want every user to have access to it, to set the everyone group to do not allow. This will do a baseline blocking everybody out of the system. If, however, you wanted everyone to have access, you can always set the everyone group to whichever level of security you want them to have set. Now, ACR's security as a default is an allow everybody everything security. So if you've got a brand new install of ACR, set up users, they will be allowed to go in and access all the different menu items straight out of the box. This is to stop issues where people haven't set security, or if it also speeds up the process of being able to get in and start using ACR, because the alternative is to have everybody blocked out of everything and you need to go in and add every single item to every user. So ACR have taken the approach that it is better to allow everybody everything and then allow you to restrict that down, rather than to go, right, everybody gets nothing and now you need to start meticulously building every single bit of security in the system. It's a much quicker, much easier method, especially for new sites who are starting to get in and use it, to get familiar with it before they start locking down the system and how it operates. So because of that level of security is why we recommend that the everyone group, it gets the do not allow initially. The next level of permission after that is display only. That means that on something like a maintenance form and such, they'll be able to, so something like invoice maintenance, customer maintenance, product maintenance, they'll be able to go in and see the information already there, but they won't be able to do anything with it. And what I mean by do anything with it is they can't edit it, they can't add to it, they can't delete it. So as we move down through the list here, what you'll see is that each new level adds on to the previous level. So the display only is essentially the first level of granting access. After that we get to the edit level. So this can obviously see the information and will allow the user to edit the existing information. So in something like customer maintenance, they could go in and update phone numbers and update contact addresses and such, but they can't create new users and they can't get rid of any users. When you move to the add feature, that's where they can start adding in new users as well as editing and modifying existing users, but they can't delete a user if they try. The next level, and normally the last level used, is the delete level. This will allow you to do essentially everything in any menu item that you've got selected. So that's usually the highest level access that we see people giving. You will see that there is a higher level called no access, and it can get a little bit confusing to new people seeing do not allow and no access, and they think that this is the same thing. They are not quite the same. The difference is if you are set to do not allow, all of the other security levels take precedence over it, meaning that if you've got two levels of permission, one do not allow, one delete, you'll be given the delete level. If, however, you had two levels of security, no access and delete, no access is the highest level security, and that will block you out of it completely. So we have seen in the past people setting the everyone group to no access. All of their users are members of the everyone group. Suddenly nobody can access a menu item. So that's where you just need to be a little bit more careful with the no access. It's great for being able to actively block a group from being able to get into a menu item, but just remember that any staff member user login who is part of a group that has no access will not be able to get into that menu item at all. So once you've sorted out your permissions, you've got your disable. This will allow you to, for the period of time you have it ticked, stop that particular lot of permissions being applied. So you might need to disable a set of permissions because somebody's temporarily taking over another job. So you can do that by just selecting disable. Pass prompt is a great tool to utilize on your high security items, things like the financials and your payroll, where there's, especially things like payroll, where there's a privacy concern involved. What pass prompt will do is once you're logged into the ACR system, when you try to log into an item that has pass prompt ticked, it will ask you for your password again. This means that if a user who has access to, say, payroll, is logged into their computer, walks away from their computer, if somebody tried to come in and access the payroll information, they would be presented with a password login screen, which is just that second line of defense to mean that they can't get into that information on someone else's computer. Now, obviously, if you've logged in past that point, you've got a menu item for the payroll open, then the person can still see it. But if you then try to change payroll menu item, you'll get presented with the pass prompt screen again to make sure that that security is in place. The last part of the security maintenance screen is the buttons at the bottom. So the buttons at the bottom look fairly standard. You've got your add user group to add additional groups, remove user groups if you need to remove one because the security is changing or it's been added in by mistake. You've got your normal save and quit. Then you've got a copy and paste. This is where working in the security maintenance screen becomes much more powerful than working in the other forms or the other screens for security, because, for instance, something like the Shop Talk one, we can easily click on copy for the customer maintenance Shop Talk, select down on Trade Talk, and select paste. Say yes, we want to copy it, and that way we can, if we're setting up the same security on multiple menu items, we can go through and set it once and then copy and paste it to each of the different menu items that we need. So what you'll notice here is that it's telling you where it's going to copy the permissions from. So depending on which item you set it to, it will tell you clearly which item it's set to copy from. Now, when you click the copy button, all it does is set which item it will copy from. When you then select on a new item and select paste, at the time you click paste, it will look at the menu security set on the item you've selected and paste that security into the new menu at that time. So clicking copy doesn't actually set the different menu security. It just sets which menu it will look at when you select the paste button. Now this is important because it gives you the ability to set the security, paste it to a few items, change the level of security, and then paste that new level of security to different items. So it's just about understanding how the buttons work before you use them. So the last button here is the security summary. What the security summary will do is it will have a look at the menu item you're looking at. It'll look at which different permissions have been set for which users groups and tell you what each of your users is going to see. So what we can see here, for the customer maintenance shop talk screen, I have a list of all of my users. It tells me what user group they're a member of that is taking precedence and tells me what permission that user group is giving them. So if I was to look in here and have a look and say the user Joe, wait, Joe shouldn't be part of the administrators group. He shouldn't have this delete function. I now can have a look back at the user number 56, login name Joe, and correct his user group permissions. So this tool is a really powerful tool for when you're initially setting up the security and you want to check, have I set it correctly for the users I have? This will tell you what each of your users, what user group is giving them the permission that they're getting, and what permission they're actually getting at the moment. And by changing this, if we were to change this to edit and save it, click it now, you'll notice that it's all changed to reflect the new change. So it reflects as soon as you've done the save. It'll have a look and update it. Awesome. So what we're going to do now, we've created our customer inquiry group just before. So we're going to add the customer inquiry group to our customer maintenance screens, our product maintenance screens, our product inquiry, and our sales inquiry. So I just wanted to sort of show you how quickly you can actually add these permissions to different menu items using this security. So what we're going to do, we're going to scroll down, find our customer inquiry. Now we want display only access in this instance. So we're just going to click display only and save. Now because this customer maintenance shop talk is selected, I can come down here, click on trade talk and click paste yes, and that updates it with the details. So I can come in here now and do product maint, set my group again, set display only and save, copy this and paste it. So what we can also do is scroll up and we can have a look at the product inquiry, and it just so happens that it had the same level of security, so I can paste it on here and paste it on the trade talk one. So the final item we're after here is sales inquiry. Now this has got a different level, so we can add the new user group, customer inquiry, and set it to display only and save. So that's it. We've now just gone through and assigned the new user group, the display only access, to 7 different menu items within ACR, all in the space of about a minute. So while some people look at the security in ACR and think it's a very complex and hard process and very involved, yes, it can be. You can end up structuring it in a way that means that you are looking all over the system to try and figure out who's got which permission and such. But if you keep your user group simple and easily explained in the description, if you use the security maintenance screen to have a look and update the different items, it does become quite simple to be able to manage who's getting which permissions in your system. So here, for instance, if we wanted to have a look at who's currently got permission with the sales inquiry, we can click the security summary, and we can see here that we've got the administrator user, the user Samantha, and Naomi B as being, and Naomi W as being the only people who have got the permission at the moment. So what we're going to do now, we're going to go and actually assign this user group to a user, which is the final link in the chain, so that we can now say, right, We've created our user group, we've given it permissions, let's give it to a user, then we can check it out. So we'll open user maintenance. We're going to bring up the user account that we're using in this case, and we can see at the moment they only have the everyone group. So what we can do is we can add the customer inquiry group and tab across. Now, access start, access end. These fields allow you to type in a date when this level of access will start and this level of access will stop. So one use for this may be if somebody's been given an upgraded level of security because they might be filling in for an employee who's going on leave. You may know that they're going to be in before you will be on the day that they're going to start, and you want the system to automatically take the permission off them at the end of it so that you don't necessarily have to worry about remembering to come back and fix the permissions up on certain days. If you were to, when you set this up, you could set this up a week, a month, a day before it was needed. Give them the group, set the date for the permission to start, set the date for their permission to end. What the system will do is on the day that their permission starts, the first time they log in on that day, they will get the upgraded level of security. The first time they try to log in on the day after, or a date after the access end, they'll stop getting that level of security and won't have it again until you change it. Now with this, leaving it blank will just mean they have this level of permission indefinitely. So this is the default way of doing it. Now, inactive, you may need to take a level of permission off somebody temporarily for some reason. So rather than deleting the line, which you can do by just highlighting it and selecting remove, you can make that level of permission inactive. That will allow you just to have it inactive for a short period of time, reactivate it without having to go back and re-enter in which groups that they're parts of. So what we're going to do now, we're just going to save this change. So now this user 82, is part of the customer inquiry group. So what we're going to do, we're going to quit out of this. We're going to change to another ACR screen, and we're actually going to log in as this user and have a look at what this user can actually do now. So this user has been set up to access the customer maintenance, the product maintenance, product inquiry, sales inquiry. However, one of the things that I had actually done in the system prior to that was locked out all users except the accounts users from the financials section. So what we'll notice here is while we can see the financials section, if I try to double click and run it, I actually get a message saying you do not have the security access necessary. So this is the menu, that's the screen that users will get if they try to run something that they don't have permissions for. So it's nice and clear, explains the situation, tells them again the menu item that they're trying to run so that they can clearly and easily come up to the system administrator to let them know if they do need to run it. So what we've got in here now, we can go into we'll go into the customer maintenance. We can come and we can open up an item. Now we've been given the permission to look at it but not edit it. So you'll see here that this is, if I click in a field and try to do it, it's stopping us being able to edit it because I don't have the permission to do that. So all I have is the permission to open up the item and have a look at it. And that same thing, we'd set the sales inquiry to that same permission. So we can come down and we can actually run a sales inquiry here and get the details we require, or with just having that display only access. So that largely covers security within the ACR system itself. I hope it's actually gone a long way to demystifying some of it. I know we've had people over time comment to us about the fact that different security can be difficult, or they believe it's going to be very time consuming. I actually believe it's quite a streamlined system, and it's quite an easy to use system once you get your head around creating the user groups. So creating a user group, knowing clearly what the user group is designed to do, and then assigning the relevant security and security maintenance to the groups. I think that's probably one of the biggest tips here, is have your groups labeled clearly. So, I hope this demonstration, as I said, has helped you to get some ideas on how you can better manage and better use the security access within ACR, possibly even how you can work to make sure that the correct people have the correct level of access, and that certain people aren't able to access parts of the system that they're not necessarily meant to be able to access, either due to privacy or because it's not part of their job. However, security doesn't stop at restricting what people can access in ACR. User security is a larger area than that, because it also includes user security and security on your computer terminals and on your server. Now, the simple, easy one to explain with that is antivirus. It doesn't sound like it fits into the security section, but it actually does, because antivirus helps protect your computers against a lot of the issues of people coming in trying to install programs that you don't desire on your computer, or install programs that have what they call piggyback programs, where you've installed one thing and something else installs that you weren't expecting. At ACR, we do highly recommend that you have some form of antivirus protection on every computer terminal that you have that connects to the ACR system, and by extension to the internet. Now, there is a large range of antivirus programs available. Some of them cost quite a bit of money. Some of them can actually be obtained for little to no cost. ACR itself don't recommend one specific antivirus over another. We do recommend that you stick with one of the better known brands, so something like a Norton, a McAfee, a Trend, Kaspersky, AVG, just to name a handful of them. We recommend you sticking with one of the better known ones, and we say it's better to have something on every computer rather than the best and blingiest on only one or two of your computers. You're better off having a decent level of security across everything rather than spending a large amount of money only to protect one or two computers and have the other machines be access points that you're not expecting. One thing you can do, talk to your local IT technician. They're most likely the person that you're going to have doing any routine maintenance or cleaning up and looking after your computers or installing new computers for you. Find out what they recommend. They might have experience with one particular one and find it good. Antivirus programs are a little bit like any other area where there's different brands that compete. Different people will have good and bad experiences with different products, and will recommend certain products over other products for different reasons. The majority of them will do the same function of protecting your computer from most viruses. So a lot of the time it's good to work with your IT technician and find one they're comfortable with and that they recommend, because obviously they're going to be able to get the best out of that product for you. As an extension to that, one thing ACR do recommend is if your antivirus or firewall program has a whitelist, that's a list of safe programs to add that you can basically actively tell the program, this is a safe program, your antivirus program, this is a safe program, I definitely want to run it. Get your local tech or add it yourself, the ACR program, to that whitelist. If you need some assistance, you can always contact our technical team, and I'm sure they'll be able to assist you in just working through that process to get it done. The reason we suggest that is it tells your antivirus that ACR is a safe program and will prevent it trying to do anything if it gets an update with blocking ACR. The last thing you want is to come in, try to run the program and find your antivirus has got a little bit too overprotective. So whitelisting the ACR program will actually assist you with making sure that doesn't happen. So the last aspect of security we're going to look at or going to discuss today is more physical security. And this is physical security of your computers and your server. Are your computers in an area that somebody can just walk in and plug a USB key into? Now this could be a member of the public or this could be a member of staff. Do you have a policy about not plugging in USB keys or portable hard drives that are from external to the company that may or may not contain viruses? That's one thing to look at. The server itself, is the server kept in a secure location that people don't sort of accidentally knock it or don't accidentally knock power cables or network cables out of the back of it? It's one of those situations, obviously, that a server can be a large machine and sometimes there is only a certain amount of room available to put it. But it may be worth considering whether there's any potential issues with if people are reaching over it to get into a cupboard or reaching around it to do something. Are the cables securely plugged in? Can they accidentally be unplugged? Something like the other end of the power and network cables. Are they clearly marked at the power points? And are the power points clearly marked to say, this is for your server, this network cable is for your server, so that somebody doesn't accidentally come in and turn it off? There's a common story in IT about somebody trying to figure out why their server kept turning off every night at about 8 o'clock at night and they couldn't figure out why. And turned out that the cleaning people were coming in and using the server's power point to plug the vacuum cleaner in. Having a clearly marked and labelled power point with something simple like computer server do not turn off or computer server do not use will try and eliminate those type of misunderstandings where someone accidentally unplugs something if they're just looking for a PowerPoint quickly. Of course, if that PowerPoint is in a secure location where most people can't get to, that may be a little bit less of an issue, but even if it is in a large computer rack that's secured, clearly labelling it does make it easier that if you're doing maintenance or work, if you've got a clearly labelled power plugs and network cables, it makes it much easier to figure out what cable you're looking for, what switch am I looking for, what network port am I after, if you need to do something or if your local technician needs to do something with you. Lastly, of course, is your data as a whole and backups. This is something that our technical team really push and something your account manager more than happy to have a talk to you about if you require it. We have a couple of options on doing it. You may still be using tape backups. You may have moved on to the USB hard drive model of physical backups that then also includes the cloud storage option. Whichever method you're on, it's critical that you have some form of backup of your data. We really can't stress that enough. Your data is your business, so you want to make sure it's protected and looked after. Things like if you are using the backup tapes or the hard drives, are you rotating which drive or backup you're taking off-site? And are you actually taking a tape and drive off-site to ensure that you do actually have an off-site backup? Now, the reason I say it as separate things is it's well and good to have an off-site backup, but if it is old, like if it's 2-3 weeks old and it's ever required, you can only ever restore to whatever the latest bit of data on that backup, that off-site backup is. So if you're taking a new off-site backup off-site every day or every other day or every week, you're going to have a lot shorter period of exposure than if you're taking a tape off once a month or never. And that off-site backup is what has allowed ACR to work with the customer and get them back up and trading as quickly as possible to allow them to actually keep trading and to work through the scenario that's occurred. So, just like to thank you and just sort of say, look, all aspects of the computer security are related. There's no one part of user security which sort of stands alone as this part is critical because of this reason or that reason. That all security is sort of works together and actually gels together to get you the best out of your system. So, just wanted to sort of wrap this up a bit with some tips. Make sure all your users are in the Everyone group is probably one of the key things. As long as all your users are in the Everyone group, you can do things like setting the Everyone to Do Not Allow and then building your permissions from there. Set the Everyone group to the Do Not Allow before you set other permissions. If you leave the Everyone group open, leaving it open will generally give it a higher level of permission, and if you're going to go to the effort of actually setting your permissions, you want to set the groundwork properly first, and that's setting the Everyone group to Do Not Allow. Remember the order of precedence of the permissions, the going from Do Not Allow, Display Only, Edit, Add, Delete, No Access, so that you can get the correct level of permission for the correct user group. And lastly, remember the No Access button will lock users out of that area. So if you accidentally set No Access to everyone, everyone is going to be locked out of that particular menu item until you change that permission. I just leave it at that and say thank you very much for joining me today. If you want any more information about user security, if you want a little bit more assistance with it, or you want some help in just sort of getting your head around where to start in your particular circumstance, please feel free to contact ACR and have a talk to either the training or the technical team. The technical team, if you're having issues and you've got thoughts about how to get antivirus and physical security. The training team, if you're looking for how to set the security up within the ACR system. Of course, if you've got issues with things like backups, or you want to find if you've got the best backup system available for your system at the moment, always feel free to contact your account manager at ACR and have a talk with him. He'll be able to let you know what options you have and what's available. So thank you very much for joining me this afternoon for the June webinar on ACR security. I hope you have a wonderful afternoon and rest of the day. Thank you.